people assume that video games are something that children do for fun. A lot of times it's not taken really serious. So when people ask me like what my research is in, I say, well, I do video games. They think it's a joke, but I have to tell them that video games are now like the #1 entertainment outlet. It's surpassed movies and music combined. Like one of the most recent game series, like Call of Duty, it exceeds like the top Hollywood blockbuster hits now. So we have to start examining video games, for their larger implication on culture and their influence on people, their influence on how people perceive, the characters that they're seeing within video games. So it's more than a game. And also with how dangerous some of the stereotypes and the representations of women and people of color are, academia needs to take it more seriously too. So game studies is just now starting to evolve and expand. So they're looking at these, sociocultural implications of video games now, and so we're starting to look at it as more than just a children's pastime. My own personal experiences gaming got me into it. I know whenever I was in graduate school, I completed my PhD at Arizona State. So when I was working on my dissertation, I was gonna I'd started doing research on Hurricane Katrina. During that time, Hurricane Katrina was happening, so I was doing like a media analysis of like the representations of like victims, deserving victims, undeserving victims. And it was heavy, it was very emotional. And somebody told me, they said, well, whatever you do for your dissertation, that's what you're gonna be doing for at least 10 years after that. And I didn't know if I could really take that emotional burden, seeing how a lot of people really didn't care. It was tough. So I started thinking, what else could I do that would be fun but still meaningful? Something that I could still, focus on marginalized populations, focus on the poor, people of color. And then this untapped area in gaming, it kind of just popped on me. Like I had this aha moment. So I was thinking, it was a class project. And so I wanted to see like what the landscape was, because video games has always been like situated as like, okay, this is something that children do. This is something that boys do. This is something that white adolescent males do. But I was like, well, I'm not any of those categories, and I love them. And I know other people like me, love them. So I really wanted to kind of see what it looks like for women and for people of color. So that's what really got me interested in the area. It was just my own personal experiences and really wanting something fun to do, something that was meaningful but also fun. So as I had mentioned earlier, gaming research is really, it's kind of like that stepchild in academia. Nobody really pays much attention to it because they don't see it as that serious. However, I was at a conference one time, and they were talking about like different films and movies and music, and I had to tell them, I checked them. I said, you know what? My poor little video games here make more money or more relevant than that movie or that music or that film. Not to dismiss or diminish, other media outlets, but to show that, hey, video games are just as important, and maybe not, if more so, looking at how expansive it is, how many people actually partake of it, and especially its influence like on children. So I was arguing, I said, we need to pay more attention to this because it is serious. Like culture's taking it seriously, so academia, we need to keep up and take it seriously as well. But in academia, it's really just kind of looked down on. I know whenever I go to like larger conferences that aren't like media focused or aren't game related, I always have to justify and explain why it should be taken more seriously. And I think it's happening. I think there have been some events that have occurred like Gamergate. That's like one of those big things that have put gaming like at the forefront, put it in the national conversation. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but research on Xbox Live, it didn't exist before I wrote it. So I'm kind of like the pioneer. I like saying that. I like using fancy words to describe myself. So I'm a pioneer in research in Xbox Live. Although other research has happened in other gaming spaces, nobody really examined Xbox Live. I think what happened in academia is that we went away from the console game. So there are like tiers, there's like a hierarchy within gaming. So computer gaming is up here. So your World of Warcraft, League of Legends, those kinds of games like kind of are like the prime gaming outlet. Whereas consoles are kind of like have like a second-class citizenship, and there's a whole bunch of class implications associated with that. People who have means to keep up their computers and their technology on their computer are able to have like, those video cards and the RAM, all that stuff. I don't know anything about that. But if you don't have money, a lot of people who don't have that much means to keep updating the technology, they play consoles. So there are some class implications in there as well. There was nothing out there, and it needed to be out there. So, and again, I did my dissertation. And a lot of times people don't read dissertations. Nobody wants to read like a 300-page document. So I needed to make it a little more packageable, a little more user-friendly for people to be able to pick it up and read what's happening, what's the current landscape, within Xbox Live. So the book was essentially that. I'm adding to the literature, adding to the gaming literature, telling people what's happening in Xbox Live. Because of the sheer number of people, I think there were 48 million registered users within Xbox Live. So these reasons compel me because people don't know what's happening in these gaming spaces. People don't realize that the experiences of women and people of color are awful. And it leads to a lot of these people, I don't want to get into the next question, but it leads a lot of these folks to have to self-segregate so they can enjoy the game. So yeah, a lot of those reasons compel me, to write the book so people can know what was happening within the space. So since video games have been normalized as a space for children, a space for boys, a space for teen white boys, whenever you have the presence of this other within there, they're treated as the other. So as a woman, I'm harassed. There are all kinds of women are asked sexual favors all the time. So I'm asked to make food. I'm told to get back into my place, like in the kitchen. So it's an awful space. And also, like for people of color. So for instance, I wrote a paper, showing the experiences of African Americans within the space, of Latinos within the space. And the racial commentary, the racist commentary within the space is just awful. People with accents experience a whole host of, derogatory, experiences. So if you don't uphold that standard American English, the space is really not for you. So what's happened, I call it's like this virtual ghettoization. What's happened is that women and people of color self-segregate. They move to the private parties and private chats. They game with people like them. So they're not able to take full advantage of all of the amenities and luxuries of the space, something that they paid for, because they're tired of dealing with a lot of this stuff. And people may wonder how this happens. So Xbox Live is an audio community. So you talk to each other, you hear people talking. And so when you talk back, it's like, your voice is emitted into the space. So essentially what happens is like racial profiling, but linguistic profiling. So they're not going based off how you look, they're going based off how you sound. And again, so a lot of people will use these auditory cues to say, hey, I think that person might be an immigrant, or that person's black, or that person sounds Mexican. And then they lash out in these manners because it's anonymous. You might have your gamer tag there, but really these spaces are anonymous. So when people don't know who you are, a lot of people will say and do things because they know there are no real consequences for doing these kinds of things. So maybe in public spaces, everyday spaces, there may be this kind of colorblind racism happening, this subtle kind of covert racism happening, but online, it's still very much overt, in your face. Old-fashioned racism is happening within those spaces. Sadly, I feel that it's part of larger gaming culture. So whenever you think about gaming culture, you have to think about three things. You have to think about the games, the gamers, and the gaming industry. So if you look at them in its entirety, the games are still very stereotypical. They're very sexist, hypersexualized, still very racist. So when you have female characters, they're half dressed. It's like semi-pornography. Their body parts are like huge. Their breasts are just extremely big. They're thin waist and they're sexualized. They don't have a really developed character as their male counterparts may. For some of the black characters, they're either criminals or they're like buffoons. They're like there just for entertainment. They're not smart, they're not bright, they're lazy. So a lot of these stereotypes have inserted themselves into these video games. So if you think about the gamers, as I alluded to, when you have the presence of women and people of color, they're not welcomed. They're not fully welcomed into the gaming community. Game developers they're primarily white, secondarily Asian, and women, they're far and few in between. So when you don't have these diverse voices at the table, you're going to continue to get these representations. I know even when there are women present, like within a lot of these in these game companies, they're relegated to like creating games for girls. What does that even mean? They don't know anything about their own demographic because girls play Call of Duty. Girls play these games. So I know back in the 90s they had, I won't mention the company, but they had a division within their company. And they said, okay, this is the girl games division. So they were creating all these games, all this pink and purple princess kind of stuff, and it didn't sell. They used those numbers that it didn't sell as justification that like, see, girls don't play games, without realizing that the girls are playing Super Mario, the girls are playing Sega, the girls are playing the games that the boys are playing. So there's no need to differentiate, the kind of games that you create for these different groups. We just need to be mindful of what those representations are. So, I mean, it's sad. And is this something that's isolated to gaming culture? No, I think it's what we see in gaming culture is just a direct reflection of how our society still perceives women and people of color. Have we progressed? Yeah, we've progressed, but are we actually inclusive, to these people? Do we value their voices? Do we value their contributions? We still haven't seen that full inclusion, that true diversity, for women and people of color in a lot of our social settings. So gaming culture, I don't want to situate gaming culture as it's some kind of other that exists that's, sending us back decades ago. It's really much reflective of our current state and our current society today. Again, we've made progress, but we still have a long way to go.